First of all, thanks for coming out tonight. This is the first of what we hope will be 6 forums on different policy matters. This one has to do with jobs and our economy. One of the things that has been interesting is we've been going through the last several months is learning about how much the economy has changed. So let's get introductions out of the way. First of all, I'm the facilitator. My name is Paul Evans. I am a candidate for the Oregon Legislature in House 20, although this event tonight is not about party. It's not about a particular person. What it is an opportunity for people to come together, listen to folks that are engaged in the fight to try to get better living wage jobs for our region, and to hopefully share some ideas. So here's how the format works. We're going to start off with everybody introducing themselves, talking a little bit about their organization, what they do, and how they're currently engaged in that particular aspect of building jobs or trying to sustain the jobs that we have. Then we'll actually be asking each person in turn to look at their current organization, their current community of interest, and explain some of the challenges, some of the major challenges that they're having to wrestle with. After that, we're going to go back down the line and talk about possible tools, possible proposals that either are working but need more help or need to be developed because they currently don't work in the changing economy that we have in the 21st century. Then we're going to take a 5 to 10 minute break. And after that, you as the audience get to be involved in a discussion about the proposals and the ideas put forward by the panelists. So we'll actually have that dialogue. So that at the end of the night, our goal is for everybody to have an opportunity to listen a little bit, learn a little bit, share a little bit, and then hopefully form a working group at the end of tonight that can continue working toward November. So whoever wins on November 5th, there'll be a packet of ideas to be handed to that person on November 6th. That's our proposal. All right, without any more further ado, why don't we start with, actually, let's start with our interpreter first. Brooke, why don't you introduce yourself and what you do?
My name is Brooke Mendez, and I'm a sign language interpreter.
I'm Polk County Commissioner Mike Ainsworth. Is that what you want?
Whatever you'd like to talk about, Commissioner Ainsworth.
I could talk all day.
Whatever you'd like to talk about for the next couple of minutes.
I've been in the office for 3.5 years. I'm a former warehouser, laminate industry production supervisor in the Dallas sawmill. I've lived in Polk County my entire life. My wife and I have been married for 39 years. We have 2 growing children. There's no place that I'd rather live than right here in Polk County. And I mean that sincerely. This is a wonderful place to live. And as a commissioner, it's my job to put that way. I want to keep this to be a wonderful place to raise a family. And you know, we have some real challenges as we move forward. But that's what we're here tonight for, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here, because the last time I checked, if you live in Polk County, I work for you. You don't work for me.
Excuse me, Paul. You can't hear back here.
You can't hear?
Yeah.
Okay. There's microphones on the table.
Yeah.
We'll start.
The button on the bottom.
On the bottom?
The little red button.
Yes. Hold it down. There we go.
Good evening, basketball fans. No. Just a minute.
There we go. For those that are just tuning in, Mike Ainsworth is also the voice of the Panthers out at Central High School. So he'll put on his Panther persona in just a minute. It's on. I can see the light.
1, 2, yeah. No, that's what I should have did. Good evening, basketball fans, and welcome to this continuity.
There we go.
Yes, yeah, that's right. So we've got a couple Panthers. Danny's a Panther.
Mr. Carnes, you know, his kids went to school at Central.
Let's see, who else? I'm done.
All right.
I won't get any votes.
Good evening. My name is Jean Love. I'm the Executive Director for the Monmouth-Independence Chamber of Commerce. I'm originally from North Carolina, if you detect a twang. I've been out here for 3 years now, and I've actually this week marks my 2-year anniversary with the Chamber. So my husband and I also find Polk County a great place to live. We thoroughly enjoy being here, and really glad to make it home. So as far as the Chamber goes, like I said, I've been there for 2 years. Our focus as a Chamber, maybe primarily a 3-part component, where 1 is business education, 2 would be looking at tourism, because we're also the visitor center, so we're the Monmouth-Independence Chamber of Commerce and Visitor Center, And then the third component would just be the community-based events. So business education, community, and tourism would be the three components for the chamber.
Hi everyone, I'm Tobias Read. I'm a state representative from Beaverton. It's a little bit of a homecoming for me to come here tonight because I came to Oregon originally from Idaho, from Idaho, to go to college at Willamette. So I spent a lot of time in Salem and I'm a proud Bearcat. I found in my time in the legislature that it's a lot like being in college. In fact, our committees are a little bit like classes, and eventually legislators have to declare a legislative major. So I want to compliment Paul for taking a very liberal arts approach to this task and creating these series of forums with your help, being able to dive into some of the very broad range of topics we take on in the legislature. For me, the major I've chosen is economic growth, and I've done that really intentionally because I think a growing economy allows us to make a lot of other choices that align with our values, our ability to invest in education and infrastructure, things that can get us into a virtuous circle and help continue to grow the opportunities for Oregonians. So I serve on the Revenue Committee, which deals with taxes, on the Ways and Means Committee, which deals with the budget, and chair the Transportation and Economic Development Committee. And my hope and expectation is that I'm going to leave tonight having gotten probably more than I've given. So I appreciate you being here and look forward to the conversation.
We've got it. My name is Kathy Martin-Willis. Sign says past president and board member of the Monmouth-Independence Chamber of Commerce, but also here as a small business owner. My husband Earl and I have been in Independence for the last 23 years. My business is over in Dallas, and so we're firmly entrenched in Polk County and love being there. So glad to be here tonight. Thank you, Paul.
Well, good evening. My name is Forrest Peck, and tonight I'm wearing a couple of hats. I'm the director of Merit, which is a micro business development organization in Salem. We're members of the Oregon Microenterprise Network, or OMEN, and I am the board chair this year at OMEN. And OMEN is a statewide association. It's kind of the umbrella for a lot of organizations that do very small business development work or micro business development work. Some names that you might recognize, like Adelante Mujeres and Forest Grove and Hacienda CDC in Portland, Mercy Corps Northwest, NEDCO, and Merit. So tonight I'm here kind of looking at jobs from the perspective of business development, because that's what we do, that's what we're interested in. I live in Independence, I'm also on the city council there. So it's great to be here tonight and be with you. Thank you.
My name is Natascha Cronin. I'm the board president for the Monmouth-Independence Chamber of Commerce. I've been on the board for a little over 3 years now, and I really enjoy that work. My other hat is the president of the Hop and Heritage Festival, which I think really is applicable here because we try to bring tourists to town with our festival, which is entirely volunteer run. So there's a lot of small business owners that are on the committee to make the festival happen, and so I think I have some perspective on that, so it's great to be here.
I'm Ron Dodge, I'm a lifelong resident of Polk County. Served 20 years on the Board of Commissioners, and I'm really happy to be here tonight. Does anybody know what the property that we're on right now was before it was a viticulture center? Does anyone know this? This man.
Used to be a county park.
That's right, it was a county park until about 1989. And at that time, the sheriff went to the commissioners at that time, and said, we have to shut this park down. There's too much bad things going on here. Some of the things that went on up here, we put the one that used to be down here across Neola land to shame. I mean, it was a horrible situation. People would come up here at night, they would do things that were non-park issues. There was hypodermic needles laying everywhere. It was a horrible situation, and we had to, I shouldn't say we, it was in 1989. They had to shut that park down. And it sat there idle for many years. And Chemeketa came up with the idea of the Viticulture Center, approached the commissioners and the administrator at that time about that. And we decided to sell the property, the former park property, to Chemeketa College for $50,000. Very good bargain. We had a great relationship with Chemeketa College. It's probably one of the best relationships of any county and any community college in the state of Oregon. We've always worked well. Back in about that same time in the 80s, Polk County and Chemeketa College bought the old Academy building over in Dallas for $1 from the Dallas School District, and they turned that into a joint venture of one floor being the Chemeketa College, the other floor being county human services type thing. So it's been a great relationship. And when you stop and think about what's happened here and economic development and jobs, it just staggers your mind. I don't think we can quite put our arms around just how much economic development this area has contributed to our community. And I was just really proud to be a part of that, of being able to really give Chemeketa College a good place to have their viticulture center, and we're really proud of that. Thank you.
Hi everybody, I'm Russell Monk. I'm the Director of Operations for High Impact Technologies. We're a group of 5 companies here in the Willamette Valley. Our key focus is creating technologies that can be used nationally and then internationally, and we focus heavily on keeping our troops alive. So we're proud to create technologies that have gone out into the world. I'm the Director of Operations, which means one day I'm pushing a broom, driving a truck, and the next day I'm in the Pentagon presenting to a group there. So, and that's happened in an 18-hour period, candidly. So I look at job creation as the great equalizer. If you have a job, you're adding to the pile. If you don't have a job, you're drawing from the pile. And so in good conscience, creating jobs is what really drives the entire economy. So my wish would be to be part of this and then actually help drive jobs here in the state of Oregon. Lived here 45 years, not going anywhere else, travel around the world. This is the best place on the planet to live, period.
If we could, let's give a round of applause for our panel members. One of the coolest things about running for office is you get to talk to really smart people and bring them together and ask questions. So that's what I get to do tonight. Because these are folks, if you think about the full spectrum of activities, you've got governance, county level, governance state, you've got a chamber, you've got small employers, you've got credit providers, you've got a walking history of how this county has managed through tough times before. This is a very interesting group of people, and hopefully we're going to have some very interesting ideas. So let's get down to really the first question of the day. When it comes to living wage jobs being defined as jobs that people can take and work in at least for a while of a career. We know nowadays you don't really have a 40-year career in the same place, but nonetheless, a career that can pay the bills, make sure that perhaps you can get ahead just a little bit from time to time. Living wage concept built the middle class. And we know that global economics and a number of other factors having to do with the pace of change, have impacted Oregon's economy. When we look at how we've survived the last several years, one of the panelists and I were talking not long ago about how small employers, not the large employers, but small employers really were the engine that kept things going. Large employers are fighting out, trying to hold on to jobs. It's actually the small innovators, the small employers that have been able to add some jobs here and there. However, not all of those jobs have been living wage. And as the pressures of globalization continue, we've got a lot on our plate. So what I thought we could do tonight to start off with is really talking about the challenges from each perspective, and together hopefully get a mosaic of what we're facing in terms of the work ahead. So Commissioner, with the microphone, why don't we start, and why don't we talk, why don't you share with us what's going on in terms of, I know you just came from a budget committee today.
It's all about money.
It's all about money. Why don't you take it from there?
I will. You know, looking at the county, and Ron and I were both in the woods products industry, and you know, I want to compliment Ron. I followed Ron as a commissioner, and the county was ran extremely well under his leadership, along with Mike Probst and Tom Ritchie, who we followed. And you know, a lot of people don't say that, but I do. I really appreciate how he set the standard and how they set the standard for us, which makes it much easier. Now, having said that, it would be nice to have a lot of timber revenue as we move forward. But, you know, at the county, we've been subsidized for a number of years through the timber revenue, through the ONC trust account. And that has gradually declined, and as has a number of these living wage jobs. Take Dallas, for instance. I was there when they shut the place down. I mean, I was the last guy out, okay? I was a production supervisor. Those were living wage jobs. The lowest paid guy that worked for me was $16.52 an hour, and he was just sweeping the floor. You didn't have to have a college education to come there. You know, I can remember when I was a kid, my grandparents lived in Bandon, Oregon, down on the southern Oregon coast. And we would go down there about 6 times a year. And we would get on the old 101 highway and go down there. There'd be 3 or 4 mills in each city. Big wigwam burner burning all the residuals up, okay? You go down 101 now, there's nothing there. A lot of this timber's been held up in litigation with the federal government. And then in return, let's just take, for instance, last year, they had that huge forest fire down south, and spent literally hundreds of millions of dollars to fight it, plus the loss of the resource. We've got to figure out how we can still continue to cut some timber and still set aside some land for the environmentalists, and not have it all go into litigation as we move forward. But it's never going to happen. Okay, that's I hate to be negative, but you know, but those were living wage jobs, and for the county, we've tightened our belt as much as we can after being subsidized with this $2.5 million. And I'm sure you see it in the paper. You know, we're losing patrol officers. The county was ran, and still is, extremely fiscally conservative. There's no waste in the county, but as that money has deteriorated and costs for employees and their benefits continue to go up. Our budget meeting today was talking about how 10 years ago, we have the same amount of employees, but through PERS and the extra money that we have to pay to PERS every other year, is $7 million more. And I don't know where that $7 million is coming from. We tried a levy, that didn't work, you know, and it was defeated very handily at 58 to 42%. People don't want to pay anymore because it takes away from something else that they're spending their money on. And you know, that's the real key to the county anyway. And you know, as we look forward and move forward, we have to educate our children, okay? And you know, all kids don't want to go to college, okay? Some of them shouldn't be in college, but they go to college and they get this huge debt and then they can hardly pay it back. But we need to centralize or vocalize, I think, or whatever it is, vocational training, okay? Used to be, you know, the guys at the mill would go, if they wanted to become a millwright or electrician, they went to Lynn Benton or Chemeketa. You know, not everybody's going to be a college professor. And so we need to really focus on those type of jobs. Be an electrician and stuff like that. And like, I've gone to a couple meetings of Forrest there at Merritt, you know, and it's all about starting up a small little business, a mom and pops. That's what this country was founded on, was a mom and pops, you know. And so many of our manufacturing jobs in the state of Oregon have gone overseas because it's so much cheaper to process it, okay? And that's really, that's the real sticking point there is, as manufacturing goes bye-bye, high family wage jobs, we're gonna open a Taco Bell and we're gonna pay $9 an hour for the people that are working there. Our economy cannot survive on a minimum wage job. They can't buy a house, they can't buy a car. They buy a house, they can't, you know, if they can't buy a house, they're not buying a refrigerator, a washer and a dryer. I mean, it's just that big circle. And so, you know, those are just some of the concerns that I have. You know, we work with SEDCOR at the county, job growers, you know. We try to involve ourselves as much as we can because the citizens of Polk County are very important to us. And so,
Thank you for that.
oh,
Ms. Love?
Hard act to follow. So from my perspective with the Chamber, when it comes to challenges that we face in developing low or living wage jobs, I think primarily from my 2-year experience, it's a 2-part answer that relies heavily on education, and not just education in the classroom, but starting with education for business owners, whether you're a sole proprietor or you're in the corporate level, having the right skill set for the business owners so that if you are the small business owner, you have all the right pieces in place. So if you want to be able to offer a job, it's the right kind of job that someone can get and have the correct living wage ability. It's not a side job, it's not a part-time job. It's a real job that you can have a real life by working at that place. A lot of our chamber members and non-members don't always know how to get to that next step. They have a successful business. They're very good at making a certain product or putting out a certain good. It's the rest of it that may not be their strength, their skill set. So the education component of how you get the business owners to be able to create and to have and offer a living wage job. And then the other half would be the employees, whether current or future, making sure that they have the skill set, whether it's college or if it is the career and technical education path, or if it's whatever the skill is that's needed for that job, making sure that that student has the access to that education, knows where that education can be found. Before moving out here, I taught for 8 years. I was a high school, a few years middle school history teacher. And I would have students who would come to me and say, I don't want to go to college, is that okay? Talk to your parents first. You know, like, I'm not going to answer that question for you. But you're right, I mean, not every child has to go to college to be considered successful or to succeed in life in general. And I don't know if students always know that, starting at any age when you're looked at and you're like, where are you going to be when you grow up? Where are you going to go to college? What are you going to do? And so it's making sure that the education component is there for the business owner as well as for the employee, be it current or future employee, that those educational resources are available. Now, what those educational resources are can vary, but in my opinion, it's making sure that if we have, in order to create and have living wage jobs, there has to be the education component.
Thank you. Representative.
One of the nice things about the legislature is there are 60 members of the House. We each come from our own communities. We each bring our own perspectives and experiences and our thoughts on the challenges that our own communities face. But as we each have a chance to travel around and interact and see these different districts, we get to learn more about that. And what strikes me is that while the district I represent in Beaverton has some very different components than what's here in Polk County, we are really a single state, and what happens in one place affects the rest of the state. There's no better way to see that than in how we fund education. It used to be, of course, that the majority of funding came from locally assessed property taxes, but that's reversed now, and that most of the funding comes from the state income tax. So a job created in Polk County affects the schools in Beaverton. A job created in Beaverton or Hillsborough or anywhere else affects the schools here. So I think it's really important that as we have this conversation, we keep that in mind, that all of us are together in the state. I want to mention, in anticipation of how the rest of tonight is going to go, the three things that I think are most important as issues for economic growth, and then I understand we'll have a chance to talk about some specific things. And the reality is that there is very little in the short run that any individual state can do to separate itself from what's going on in the world economy and the national economy. We try, but in the short run, those efforts I think are modest. In the long run, I think it really comes down to three things. I think it's education, innovation, and infrastructure. I think already I've heard some of those themes echoed in what we've talked about. When it comes to education, it's about creating a talented and competitive workforce for all sorts of industries. Both of my predecessors as speakers are right. It's not just about higher education, although higher education is important and higher education can be broadly defined to include community college. That's a really critical part of our future. Innovation has to do with business starts. It has to do with new technology coming from higher ed and from process innovations, and Russ is going to have lots to say about that, I'm sure, and making sure that the businesses and entrepreneurs who have those ideas have access to financing to make those businesses scale and grow. And the other thing that we all rely on, whether it's for economic growth or even just for our own quality of life, is infrastructure. Some that is really visible, roads and bridges, some that is very invisible, but just as critical to deliver clean and safe drinking water, for example. So I think those are the three key things. And as we go forward, I'll have some more to say.
Yeah.
Wow, okay, we're gonna shift perspective here in a really big way. I am a sole proprietorship, small insurance agency. I'm in downtown Dallas, and so I have a lot of time to spend talking with my fellow shop owners and business owners down there. And we're exactly those mom and pop businesses that folks are saying have really been for a long time, you know, the backbone of what we know as middle class America. One of the things that in talking with owners that they combat when trying to pay their employees, if they have employees, living wages is their own rising costs. And yet their profits aren't increasing at that same rate. In my particular business, the costs of operation go up. We've got to pay, for office space. Utilities are always on the rise. Supplies are on the rise. But unfortunately, my clients, when they're unemployed, are not buying new homes. They're not buying new cars. They're not starting businesses. And as a result, my business stagnates. So obviously not hiring anytime, or someone anytime soon. And for smaller businesses, even when we do have employees, have to be really conscious of the hours that we work those employees and our staffing. The profit margin in a small business is a very fine line. And lots of organizations, go talk to your business owners. It's tax deductible. Well, okay, that's fine at the end of the year, but in the meantime, we have to pay our own mortgages. So what exactly the solutions are, I don't know. I think we need to have some incentives for our small business owners. I see lots of personal tax credits for a variety of things. And I don't know if that may be the way that we need to go with our very smallest business owners, and I look forward to exploring that a little bit later.
Forrest?
Okay, well.
No pressure.
No pressure. I pretty much agree with everything I've heard so far. I'm gonna probably have a little bit different perspective on things because of the type of work that not only my organization does, but many of the organizations that are members of Omen do, in that we work with micro businesses. And the question was the challenges we face. Well, I think like everybody else, access to financial resources is a continuing struggle. Funds that used to be there for things that each of us do are there in shorter supply today than they were 3 or 4 years ago. So that's just a universal situation that we all deal with. And what that does is it takes away from resources that would otherwise be available to provide the education that Jean mentioned to small business owners. The resources are there, there's just not as many of them yet at a time when we need more investment in supporting small businesses. We don't have access to the funds that we need. So we do more with less, and we don't do it as well because we're stretched thin, but we do the best that we can. The other perspective too that I'd bring forward would be that because our focus is on these really small businesses, I think one of our challenges is in public perception of what those businesses represent and the aggregate impact that they have on our local economies, which is huge, by the way, but I don't know that that's generally understood.
Can you explain more about that for folks that are listening?
So if you look down pretty much any main street in Oregon, you'll see lots of retail shops there, and for the most part, those are all micro businesses. There's 5 or fewer employees, and many of those businesses didn't take a lot of capital to start. Generally, we're looking at businesses that can start with $50,000 or less. Yet, those businesses, if you have a healthy downtown corridor, say something about the livability of your community. So if you're looking to make investments in other areas of the economy, maybe you're trying to expand a business that's there so that it can create more jobs, and you're trying to induce the owner to put money into that business to expand it, or if you're looking at recruiting somebody into your area, the livability of your community is a big factor that folks look at when they make those decisions. So if your downtown businesses look bombed out, it says that your community is not a very livable community. Yet those businesses are your micro businesses, and they don't have a lot of employees. A lot of the focus that is given today to economic or investment in business development goes towards business retention and expansion efforts. It goes towards traded sector investments, and I'm not here to say that we shouldn't do that. I think that's probably a good thing for us to be doing. But I think we need to balance that with keeping our local sector strong and healthy, which contributes to the vibrancy of our communities and therefore to our overall well-being. It also contributes to the income of those families that are represented by each of those businesses. In an aggregate sense, when we look at, and Paul made reference to this, when we look at what happened through the worst of the economic downturn, according to the Small Business Administration statistics for Oregon, we see that from 2007 to 2010, those 4 years, there was only one firm size that actually showed a net increase in jobs created in Oregon, and those were your 5 or fewer businesses. Yet much of our investment in making businesses stronger goes in other areas. As you increase the business size, the net increase or decrease in jobs grows. And the bottom line to all of that is that were it not for our really small businesses, our Main Street businesses, our situation would have gotten a whole lot worse than it did. They saved our bacon, really, in terms of employment. So I think that's something that needs to be recognized, and I think that's probably one of the challenges that I think as an organization and as a network we face, is in helping people understand that the power of these really small businesses, the potential that they represent is huge, and it's untapped. And we, as of yet, have not come up with a strategy for how to tap it.
Thank you.
So I swear I'm not copying you, because the very first bullet point on my piece of paper is Main Street. But I feel very strongly about that. And I'm relatively new to Polk County. I've been here about 3 years now, and but in my time as a human being living on the planet, I've lived in lots of small communities, and I very much agree with Forrest that Main Street really is the heart of the community, and it speaks to what your community is giving off to people who come to town. And so for me, the challenges, my perspective of the challenges that we face, and I think specific to Polk County, because Polk County is in a great position because of all the tourism that is available to us. The challenges are great. They come down to resources, how much money's out there, and frankly, I would just be echoing what everybody else is saying. But I think when it comes down to everything, although there are challenges, what I love about Polk County and about Monmouth-Independence and the Dallas area is the amazing ability for this community to come together and to collaborate. And I think when we look at challenges, that's where we kind of have a leg up, because there are so many things in this community where people volunteer their time, and they may have a low-paying job, or an unfairly paying job, I'd go as far to say, but somehow folks in this community still find time to volunteer. And I think that is the resource that we need to keep exploring. And as we find our challenges, we need to look at the folks who maybe aren't volunteering yet and encourage them to come out and volunteer. And then hopefully that gives us the opportunity to educate. It gives them job experience to be eligible for positions maybe they weren't able to have in the beginning. So I go to the IDA meetings, which is the Independence Downtown Association, and it's a really fun group that meets once a month, and it's an incredible group to be a part of and to witness on a monthly basis, because they are all small business owners. We come together, we meet in a coffee shop, there's usually about 30 of us, and you can see this Main Street mentality really taking place. And there's one person comes up with an idea and they take it and run with it. And if it works, great. If it doesn't work, that's okay, we'll try something new next year. And I think that's where we have to go. Our challenges are very easily identifiable. It's the solutions that are important. And I think our volunteers and our folks who love this community, which is always so evident, are the people that can help us find those solutions.
Is it on?
Yes.
I'm going to just take off a little bit on what a couple speakers before me talked about, and that's just local things. About 4 years ago, the Dallas Chamber of Commerce approached the Board of Commissioners about putting in a bounty Saturday market type deal on the courthouse lawn. And we weren't too happy about it. We didn't think too much of that at the time. We thought, boy, this is our lawn looks like a golf course anyway. It looks really nice. We're going to get it trampled on. It's going to really hurt it. And we got to thinking, well, we'll give it a try for a few weeks and see what happens. And it's really gone over well. I talked to a farmer one time, South County, that told me that by selling his produce just on Thursday at the bounty market, paid his light bill for the month, PP&L bill. And that doesn't seem like very much, but it really is when you get to think about it. It's the little things like that really make a big difference. And the bounty market, as I understand, is going to be moving to Independence and Monmouth as well. I've heard that anyway. And so that's something that just started out. It was a little bit wondering about it, but it's really turned into something great. It kind of shows the cooperation that you can have between some like the Chamber of Commerce and government, because the courthouse square is the center of everything in Dallas. I certainly agree with the speakers about downtown. Dallas definitely has a problem about their downtown, and to bring people downtown. You can go to Dallas on Saturday, 2 o'clock, and you go downtown, there's 10 people, 10 cars on Main Street. You go up to Walmart and Safeway and all those other places, there's 10,000 people up there. I mean, it's not just Dallas, it's a pervasive thing all over the country. What we can do to try to save our downtowns, and the counties can help in that, that's certainly a step in the right direction. And it's just something that should be done. Thank you.
Now, Russ, before you start, you represent a business that's in Salem, not just the Polk County region, but actually in Marion County, just across the river. And we have lots of relationships across the river. Sometimes we think them and us and all that. Why don't you explain kind of how your business works and the challenges you're having and from that perspective of the Salem region?
Thanks. I would imagine the greatest challenge that our company faces is actually the federal government not doing its job. And when they lock up and just literally put the brakes on, it jams all of my programs. About 2 years ago, when the divisive attitude prevailed and no budgets were set and things like that, that locked up almost every program I was working on. And we actually had to downsize based on that. And what happened then is that trickles into the state government locking up, that trickles into the local governments locking up. So win, lose, or draw, I would ask the federal government to do their job, come up with budgets, let the entire market equalize to that. And I would envision that would be the biggest, on a macro level, the biggest challenge I would see in our business is the federal government not doing their job. Okay? And that really does impact everything else we do that way. I would envision the next big challenge that we see is innovation. I had a guy from Singapore come in and say, how do you teach innovation? And I said, well, you start when you're about this tall and you color outside the lines and you don't get beat up for it, you know? Or you don't
Literally.
realize.
In some places the world literally not being.
Yeah. And Oregon, if you don't know this, and we all live it because it's in the water and the air we breathe, innovation is one of the biggest strengths we have in our economy and in our people here in Oregon. And the ability to take innovation and be able to draw it out of the garage or out of the micro business and be able to scale it up where you can take that to a national and international level. Innovation is one of our greatest strengths in the state of Oregon. And so I would envision one of the challenges I would see is the ability to take innovation and commercialize it and take it to the world. We actually have 5 companies in the Willamette Valley. We have a big rainwear manufacturing company. Most of your Polk County police officers that wear our gear as they're driving by you on their motorcycles, that's one of the products that we make. And I'm proud to say US-made clothing. There's not many of those around. And that's a statewide and a national, or kind of a Northwest hub of what we do. I look at job creation again, both on both sides of the river, drive what we really are trying to do here. And so if I would be able to have a wish list, I would say, how do you take innovation, turn it where you can actually have state and federal and county and cities and everybody looking at that and say, how can we work together to drive that into the world? And so I would envision that would be a really big priority. That's, I think, a good way to summarize what my challenges are.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just kind of take, because of time, we want to make sure and put the pieces together, then we'll swing back down in terms of proposals or concepts. So far we've heard innovation, we've heard infrastructure, the need for education, not just higher education, although that's critical for innovation and new science, but also vocational, and some tools to help the folks that are struggling every month make sure that they can keep their payroll going. And from Forrest's point, potentially some access to capital so that small business can take that product and actually get it out when they may not have the funds right now in their bank account to be able to do that. Keep those jobs secure and be able to get the products to the marketplace. And then of course the public-private partnerships that quite frankly cannot be emphasized any more than being here at Chemeketa with this viticulture training center, which training people hopefully to make Oregon wine that can be sold across the seas for profit. So why don't we start back with Russ, actually.
One other thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
As they were talking.
Yep.
No, really. We need to take care of each other, okay? Each and every one of us here, all of us here. And the way that we can do that is we can shop local, okay? We need to go to the insurance person that's downtown. Or, we need to go to the merchants that are in Monmouth-Independence or Dallas, because they support all the things that we do. Number one, they support jobs, and we need to take care of that. And when you go to a business like that, my wife and I have kind of done this last year. When you use your charge card, they get charged like 2%. We started to use cash. I know it's a novel idea to use cash nowadays, but for every $100 that they put out, they gotta pay $2. Okay, it comes in. So they save $2 every time you use cash. If you would do that, if you go out to a meal at Pink House or someplace, just little things like that, because it's small pickings as far as it's that low-hanging fruit, and we just need to take care of each other and take care of our own little community. I shop local, okay? I shouldn't say I never go to Salem, but I really, literally stay in Polk County for 99% of the things that I need. The only time I really go is I go to Macy's to my wife something for Christmas. But other than that, if I want to go to the movie, I go to Independence. If I want to come and eat somewhere, when I'm over here in West Salem on Thursdays, I eat at Annette's, okay? I'll plug these people because these folks are what this country was founded on. A small little business, you know, and the least that we can do is take care of each other. You know, we don't need to go anywhere else.
Well, and on that, in terms of taking care of each other, and again, to respect everybody's time, if we could keep responses maybe to 1 or 2 points and maybe 1.5, 2 minutes. But I want to emphasize these points. When you talk about innovation, Russ, what are the things that would literally be helpful? Something over the last several years that would be helpful if the state could provide, or if the counties could provide, or if maybe some consortium of both could provide to help when the federal government does lock it up, or when a country says we want this, but we want it a little bit different. It's a one-off, so there's some extra cost involved in something like that.
Thank you. I would envision, if I could have a wish list, I would take and reset the Oregon Economic Development Division a little bit, and I would take, instead of the focus on just making business connections, I would reroute it in 2 ways. And the first one would be to be able to take as much energy as we're spending abroad and trying to bring big companies abroad into Oregon. I would take and curtail that a little bit. You want to keep that going, but we're competing against probably 25 other states on exactly that same thing. Sometimes we have great things to offer, sometimes we don't. If you looked at the small businesses, the next Nike is sitting in somebody's garage right now. And if they don't have the support of the state or the support of the local communities to believe in them and help get that funded, that will just die in the vine, and it'll cap out when it doesn't have the ability to grow. So I would reset the economic development on stage 2. Marketing and kind of business development or business contacts is what, you know, as I work around the world, that's what they're focusing on. I would actually create a pure sales division for the state of Oregon, for the companies of the state of Oregon, and say, we are your sales front. We are here to move this. How you get jobs is you actually have to have sales, okay? Job creation starts with someone placing an order, then you have to get raw materials, you have to get employees. So if I would actually have a wish list, the state of Oregon, reset the way they're focusing on it and create sales units around the world that take Oregon product and it's a pure sales, not just a connection or a business bump. It's actually pure sales. And if that happens, I believe that would be really healthy. I would actually create a for-profit sales department, kind of a quasi-governmental thing, and if the sales department is successful and makes a lot of dollars, you know, let's say it makes more money than the governor, that's great news, because all of those are turning into jobs in Oregon because of that. And so I would wish that I could pitch that into the game. So that's my thought.
Thank you. Ron?
Question again?
The one thing you wish you had that you didn't have. We were trying to keep jobs, we're trying to make jobs, we're trying to help employers. What's the one thing you wish you had or that we could develop? Or we can come back to you later, also.
Yeah. You should answer that.
We really, I think sometimes it's the indirect things that make the difference. We really tried hard to enhance the fairgrounds. We made it real easy for and we encouraged the museum to go in at the south end of the fairgrounds for economic development, as well as social and cultural and educational, all that kind of reasons like that. But it's something that's really hasn't worked out. People are not that interested in fairs anymore, and you've got to figure out a way of getting people to county fair, I think. 25 years ago, when the population of Polk County was 55,000, there were 20,000 people that paid to get into the fair, and now there's 10,000. They had a beautiful county fair last year. The weather was perfect. They barely cleared 10,000 people to gate. And I think that's not only Polk County, it's all over, nationwide. People are losing interest in fairs, and that's something we have to work on, I think. And I think the commissioners are doing it. You bought some more property there. I think that emphasis is going to have to be more, not so much the annual fair, but the year-round fair. Might be a way of taking care of it, because the annual fair is losing out. But there's all kinds of commerce that goes on at the county fair. You know, and if the population keeps going down like it is, vendors aren't going to go out there and pay money to be there.
So to follow up, an idea may be to make it easier for local governments to leverage public space in partnerships so that people could come and...
We certainly did that with the museum. We made it very easily for them to get the permits, and we knocked off some money on the permit process, and we did as much as we could. We thought that was going to really help Farrell's, the restaurant out there. It did for a while, but then they went out of business now. We thought that Farrell's restaurant would really be a anchor business in Rickrell because of the museum and that kind of thing. It didn't work out that way. At least we tried anyway. We did the best we could. But
For those tuning in that want to buy a restaurant, there actually is a restaurant for sale.
You know, the thing about that is that 99 and 22 in Rickrell is just it's the hub of everything. And we've got to figure out a way of getting Rickrell on the map. If the winery's there, I'm going to have my 50-year class reunion at the winery this year in downtown Rickrell. So that's going to be, but we have to figure out how to utilize that fairgrounds and the museum. People aren't going to the museum as much as they used to. We have to, and then that bring other businesses in. And it's an uphill climb, I know that, but I know that the present county government's trying hard to work on that.
Natascha?
I'm a my glass is half full kind of gal, so I really struggle with these kind of questions because I don't know, it's always sun shining in my Oregon.
It's a good philosophy to have living in Oregon.
Can I come over on your side?
Yeah. For me, it really comes down to Main Street, figuring out a way to get those businesses going, figuring out a way to get the landlords that are living out of state to reinvest in the small communities. I know both Independence and Monmouth and Dallas, there are those core group of people who just have the love for their community and somehow figuring out how to put that energy back into the water and getting everyone to drink the water would be great. But I think community collaboration, figuring out a way to get people re-engaged, and I think that's kind of an age-old, way to solve the problem. But it goes back to coming back to the fair and figuring out how to reinvigorate people. I recently learned that the senior projects are starting to go away. And for me, when I was in school, that was kind of a way that you were forced to volunteer, but you kind of learned this love of volunteerism and got to understand your community on a level that you really hadn't before. And because our resources are getting smaller and smaller, there are programs that shouldn't cost us very much that are. So my job is that I manage a local vet clinic, and we constantly have students that come in, well, when I grow up, I want to be a vet, so can I come volunteer here? And I just take a deep breath, I'm like, well, yes. However, here's a packet of paperwork you have to sign, and do you have this kind of insurance? And well, you might get bitten by a dog, and you can't do this and that. And you can just kind of see this glaze go over their face, and you're just like, oh, I just squashed that dream, and like, well, what else do you want to be when you grow up? And how can I help you find a place to go volunteer? So it's my mantra. It's my passion is volunteering and figuring out where you can make a difference. So enabling our youth and frankly every age to figure out what they love. It doesn't have to be your job. Sometimes your job is just there to pay your bills. If you can figure out what your passion is and what you love and figure out how to be in that sector, whether it's just giving your time, you get so much back. And I think that's the answer.
So if I could encapsulate that, maybe perhaps one of the things that we could look at is how can we make volunteering, if not easier, then at least potentially for mom and pop businesses that want to have more volunteers, pooled risk so that there may be a way that they can get the benefit of someone learning a new skill or someone being there without having to themselves pay all of the freight for the insurance cost or the liability.
Right. Well, I think programs like AmeriCorps, Peace Corps, were sort of my parents' generation's answer to the problem, and we have to come up with a way.
AmeriCorps is not that old. Just, for those that are tuning in, as President Clinton, that's not that. Thanks for sharing, Natascha.
Are you through?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
All right. So again, I'm going to come at this from a business development perspective because I think that a part of the solution lies in growing stronger small businesses. But as I think about many businesses that grew to be very successful, what occurs to me is that many, if not most of the owners of those businesses didn't really start off to have a big business. You know, and Phil Knight, or Nike was mentioned, but you know, Phil Knight was just a guy working out of the trunk of his car with a waffle iron, filling a need. He saw a need. And yet, he had an environment that allowed him to keep growing his idea and innovating. And now it is what it is, and it employs a lot of people and pays good wages, at least to the folks that live in the United States today. So I want to throw that out there, that if we create the environment where those who innovate can innovate, then I think it's going to go a long ways to creating opportunities for people to become employed down the road. One of the things specifically, though, if we have a state legislator up at the table, that we could take a look at is our economic development strategy that we have in Oregon. And currently we have one. We call it Grow Oregon. And it's targeted to businesses that are poised to grow, and if they could expand their markets and sell outside the system that they're currently in, outside of Oregon, then they would bring in more money and they would get bigger. So that's the theory, and so it's targeted to businesses that have at least $1 million in sales, up to $50 million in sales. What I would say is that we might do ourselves well to rethink that strategy, because there probably are a lot of smaller businesses and even some micro businesses like Phil Knight's that potentially can grow to the scale that we want to see them grow if they're resourced properly. So resources would be capital, but it would also be access to high quality market data, research that would help people identify where new markets lie. So that would be one thing. There's a couple of other things that I see that are just real easy fixes in my mind anyways. And one is a self-employment assistance program that was piloted in Oregon. Oregon was one of 8 states. And this was targeted to people who were laid off and allowed them an option. They were able to pursue business development in lieu of job search. And it was successful. Probably the most notable success is Urban Airship out of Portland. But it was replicated across the country after Senator Wyden had a bill passed through Congress last year in 2013. So it's now available in every state. In 2010, the Department of Labor gave guidance to the state, to the workforce investment boards, that said that they could use their training dollars for the purpose of helping these folks that were in the self-employment assistance program start and grow their businesses. So far that hasn't happened. So I think there could, and I think there's one isolated incident in Southern Oregon where the regional board there has, but I think there's some opportunities there to connect dollars that could be used for support with a program that's already in place. And also I would say too that the state has a block grant program that's targeted to micro enterprises. But since 2009, when the funding that was spent there was $880,000, it's declined to 2013, where $75,000 was spent last year, at a time when we're all focused on trying to help businesses start and create more jobs. So I think there's questions like that that need to be answered, and if there's things in that mix that need to be addressed, they should be addressed so that we can get those dollars working and doing what they're intended to do.
Wow, you're a hard act to follow. Okay, so I guess for me, just a couple of quick points. One is I'd really like to see a reduction in wage repression. And this was something that And we dealt with in my own home. My son at 21 realized that college wasn't going to do it for him. Didn't have the patience and perseverance for that. And so decided he really wanted to go into information technology though. And was told, great, those entry-level jobs, all you need is an A+ certification. And so we found this wonderful program through Job Corps. We packed his bags, we sent him to Idaho. He went, and 2 years later came home with his A+ certification, job search assistance, and just really ready and eager at 23 to kind of take on the world, you know, and start this adult life. Couldn't find a job. And the reason he couldn't find a job is because in that 2-year period with economic decline, employers realized they could require a bachelor's degree for those same entry-level positions. And so for our young people, quite simply, we need to hire entry-level candidates for entry-level positions rather than shooting for the stars to get the bachelor's or master's degree in the door. Secondly, we allow companies to pay low wages, state minimum wage, because we, the taxpayers, subsidize those wages through food stamps, housing, and other governmental support. Quite honestly, I feel that those companies need to be penalized if they're not willing to pay their employees living wages, that those employees should not have to rely on the taxpayers. So I would say, penalize those that aren't paying living wages, incentivize those that are. Encourage that to happen. Give those companies tax breaks. So, there you go.
No, one of the downsides of being at the end of the table is there's so much that's been said. I feel like I'd like to react to and have something to say about. A lot of what I agree with, a little less I disagree with. But so I want to confine myself to 2 things. One relates to access to capital. And I agree with some of what's been said. The challenge for us at the state level, I think, is that we really are at this point dealing with a finite set of resources. And one of the most challenging things as a legislator, you've experienced this to a certain extent already, Paul, because of your previous service, but I think you'll get to experience this even more. People come in all the time and say, we need more money for X. Yes, I agree. That's a good program. We should do that. It would have tremendously good impacts and great results for the state. And then you get to ask the other question, what do you think we should do less of? That's usually the reaction. And that is the challenge. I don't think any one of us would have any trouble finding good examples of programs that we need to fund. The challenge is finding those dollars amongst that finite resource. So a job is a job in the eyes of the state in terms of, provided they're the same general quality of income and benefits and so on. I'm less concerned about whether it's at a small business or a large business, if it has the opportunity to be stable and to grow and to have that impact throughout the economy. That's a good thing. So I want to create those opportunities because they're going to create more income tax revenue to the state, which allows us to invest further in education, these other programs, and so on. So we are doing a lot, I think, around trying to make sure that access to capital spans the entire range, so that small businesses have the access they need, so that there are programs that work for small businesses. We passed and created the Oregon Growth Board, whose purpose is to make sure that we have a good handle on where all those programs exist. There are lots of very small programs that exist in very dark and hard to find corners of state agencies. We want to make sure that there's a single point of contact for the entrepreneurs, the growing businesses who might need that opportunity, and that it's flexible enough to account for the changing conditions that proceed on a pace that is much faster than the legislature needs. So the Growth Board is empowered with the resources that it controls to change course, to adjust conditions and create programs when there are new opportunities. So I would say that's a place where we have lots to work together on. The other thing, because I'm not sure anyone else will talk about it, is infrastructure. I mentioned that earlier. We're really foolish in the way that we do infrastructure in a lot of ways. Frequently, we say to start, we need a building that is these dimensions, that has these many floors, and so on. Instead of saying, we need a facility that's going to help us accomplish these ends. And inviting in engineers and contractors and designers and architects to help us figure out what that looks like. And then we're also dumb when we say, well, how cheaply can you build that? And that's the end of the conversation. We're not going to, so someone builds it cheaply and walks away. We need instead to create a system that aligns those incentives so that contractors get paid when the infrastructure is open and operating as designed. We've had a very exciting and promising approach undertaken called the West Coast Infrastructure Exchange. Because even if we take that approach with all the projects in Oregon, we're not probably big enough to capture a lot of interest from the pension funds and private equity sources and so on. They're out there in the world looking for a stable, reliable source or place to invest their money. But if we combine with British Columbia, Washington, and California, we're starting to get big enough to do something interesting. So there's some pilot projects that are underway in that regard. It can work for roads, bridges, buildings, courthouses, irrigation systems, all kinds of things. So I would point to those two things as important.
Representative, if you could talk a little about where could people go that are tuning in right now? Where can they go to find out more about the Job Growth Board and those dark corners? Where can they go first look to try to find it?
Secretary of State has a good Business Express website that helps in that regard. And we actually created the Office of Small Business Assistance that is very akin to an ombudsman to help entrepreneurs and business leaders who are dealing with state government. The Growth Board is easily found through web search too. That's pretty new, so we're still working through the processes and programs that we're going to create, but those are three that I think are easily accessible.
So to try not to repeat, solutions, possible solutions, there are a lot of amazing resources. The Express portal is fabulous. If anyone as a business owner or anyone's interested in employment information, statistics on businesses and whatnot, the Express portal really is a one-stop shop. It's very easy to navigate, so the website's a tremendous, I think, addition for businesses to use. Resources in general, there are a lot of them, and I think one challenge is making sure people know that they're available. It's one thing to create all these programs, it's one thing to have if the funding is available, which that has been cut, so not as many are available, but for the resources that are around, making sure that people know they're there. I do actually get phone calls at the Chamber where I have business owners who want to ask me a question about something that they need for their business. And I refer them to, or maybe it's someone who's looking to start a business, but I refer them to Merit or to Chemeketa Small Business Development Center or whichever outlet might be the answer to their question. Like, oh wow, I didn't know that existed. Okay, so especially for the people who are already in business, they're not aware of some of the business resources that are available. Not sure why, but they're not. So part of not only having the resources available is getting the word out that they exist. I know the Chamber, we have a nice resource page, but if you don't know that it's there, you don't know to go there to see that there's a link to the portal. So overall with the Chamber, mentioned earlier, we look at business education, community, and tourism, and it's overall about economic development, which is a phrase that you hear repeated over and over. And if you look at economic development and what it is, for me, the parts of that stands out, where the resources come into play, as well as all these other comments that have been shared, is building the social capital, making sure the social capital is there, the infrastructure has to be there, we have to be competitive, and then ultimately you're doing all this for sustainability. You need to be able to have all these pieces together for the puzzle so that once it's all there, it stays, and it's sustainable, and it's not falling apart 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. So how to go about that would be the education component of letting people know what the resources are, and if there are any missing pieces to the resources, if there's funding to put those pieces in place. Is that 1 or 2 minutes?
That's great. Commissioner, here's the deal. You're the last solution side before we take a 5-minute break, because we want to keep close to the time limit.
So I get 2 minutes in? Well, I'm going to talk about something that we do at the county that deals, I call it, economic development, and Forrest was talking about that. And you're going to think this is kind of way out there, but it's with regards to drug court at the county. And what I mean by that is that we have these about 30 participants that are in drug court at the county, okay? They come in with a variety of needs. What we do If they come in, we provide some training for them. We provide counseling for these folks. A majority, if not all of them, their children are in foster care. What we do through this process, and for some, it takes 12 months, for some it takes 18 months. What we do is we help them along this journey from their addiction. And trust me, folks, it'll tear your heart out to see some of these folks. Some 19, 20-year-old girls hooked on heroin, to a gal, and I always share this when I talk, there was a gal that was 52 years old that was in drug court. And so one day, and we have it on Mondays, and Ron is familiar with drug court. Anyway, she looked so happy, okay, and I went over and talked to her. I said, boy, you're just beaming today. And she goes, well, Mike, I've got my 60-day coin. And I go, wow. I said, if you don't mind me asking, when's the last time you can remember that you were clean for 60 days? She sat and thought for about a minute. And the tears started rolling down her eyes. And she goes, you know, Mike, I think I was 13. Now, 13 to 52 is a long gap, okay? And it takes certain folks a long time to where they think they hit bottom. But when I'm talking about the economic development part of this, as I try to wrap it up, is that these folks come in basically with nothing. If they don't have a high school diploma, we assist them with getting a GED. And they have to have that before they graduate. If they don't have a driver's license, we help them get a driver's license. And if they don't have a job, we help assist them get a job or to continue on with their education at a community college. So as we wrap it up there, these folks have taken away from society for a number of years, sucked resources out, which could be used for the Economic Development Fund in any community. They get their children back, which in foster care, let's just say $1,000 a kid a month, you know. So that money comes back. They're still going to need a little assistance as they move forward, but not as much as they had. And the greatest reward of that is that their kids see that mom or dad are really a pretty decent person after they've gotten off of drugs. And they could be a role model for their kids, because their kids have had to live a horrible life, you know, being away from mom and dad. And that economic development, you do it one person at a time. And it can be difficult, and you're going to think, oh, this commissioner's crazy for talking like this. But I'm serious when I say it, because these people have gotten their lives back, okay? And now they're being productive citizens when they've got a job. They're paying taxes instead of always taking. And the more people we can get through that at the county, the more money that's available for merit or for any other organization out in the government, okay? So, in this last year, I mean, March the 10th, we had 9 people who got their lives back. Mom and dad have got their kids back, you know. Brother and sisters got their brother or sister back. I mean, it's right down on the ground level, but it is economic development at the very best, because we're talking about people, okay? And that's what we need to take care of, are our people. So.
On that note, Commissioner, Marion County has also initiated a veterans court based on a similar model. And other states are starting to look at that as well to try to get people back onto that side of the ledger. So your point's well taken. What we're going to do right now is we're going to take a 5-minute break, which is actually a 5-minute break, honestly. Give people a chance to go to the bathroom, get some coffee. I guess that kind of bathroom and coffee thing, they kind of go together nonetheless. Grab a cookie, do whatever. We're going to start back up, and we'll take a few questions after that so we can actually talk to the panel about different things that they have put forward or things you want more information about. We appreciate you hanging in where you're at. We're a little bit behind schedule, but not actually that much. So take about a 5-minute break and see you in 5 minutes. Thank you. Okay. We're trying to make sure and respect everybody's time. For those that are just tuning in, we're We're having an opportunity to talk about all things jobs and the economy. I want to thank everybody that's here. People are coming back to their seats with cookies and coffee and juice. And I understand we just had some people leave. Your ideas, by the way, I guess have been now captured by the opposition team. This is not a partisan event, but evidently some folks on the other side of the aisle really liked your ideas, and I guess we're going to try to steal them. So for those that are tuning in, we were there first, and these are actually the authors of those ideas. That's right. Good ideas, doesn't matter. Red, blue, purple, green, whatever. But I always like it when folks have to respond to what we're trying to do. So we're going to open it up for about 3 or 4 questions. I know that the evening is rolling on, and for those that are tuning in back at home, we want to make sure and not go too long. But there's some really compelling ideas that have been mentioned. So I'm going to throw it out to the audience. Are there? Yes, Bill, what's the question? I'm going to repeat the question, so you repeat it, and I'll say it so it's in the microphone.
That's okay. I'll just say it loud so you all can hear it, and hopefully the audience can too. Oh, that'll really blow them out. Thanks. I'm really pleased. I grew up in a small town, and it's very refreshing to hear the comments. I've worked most of my life in small towns, and the comments that you all made really hit not only head-wise, but heart-wise. And I wanted to take an issue that we've heard quite a bit of late, both at the national level and also at the Oregon level, and that is minimum wage. There have been a lot of proposals, a number of them are fairly modest, keep Oregon where it is, keep our escalator in so that our minimum wage is going to continue going up. We probably have one of the highest, I think, around the nation right now. And then all the way to some of the proposals are, some of the unions have proposed it, some congressmen have proposed it, I think it's even been on the president's agenda in part, but let's get that minimum wage up to the point where there's less disparity between that magic thing we talk of as family wage jobs and minimum wage. And you have a marvelous perspective from the small business and micro business and the small community. I'd really like to hear some of your thoughts about where you stand with respect to raising the minimum wage and how far can we go with that before it actually has a negative impact.
Okay. Without putting people too much on the spot about where you stand. Who would like to comment?
I'll jump right in.
Jump 1, 2, and then we'll get to, okay, go ahead.
I think the minimum wage is abominable where we're at right now, candidly. The reason why is, as an employer, we actually, our job is to help people be able to have lives, okay? And try to make it so that our markets will be able to sustain that in how we sell our product and take it to the world. A common person can't make a life on minimum wage, candidly. If you look at the cost of living, that's not real. And so my own personal opinion and me as a business owner, I have to say it should be somewhere between $10 and $12 an hour to be able to compete at any level to make a living in the game. So that's my own thought. Thank you.
Ron?
10-10.
Okay. Anybody else?
20.
It's very specific. I want to say something positive about it, and then something I think is a real opportunity. On the one hand, I think it is a wonderful thing that we have the adjustment in Oregon, so that we don't have to have the same sorts of fights that polarize and paralyze Congress. Having said that, I don't think that the minimum wage is necessarily the best way to ensure living wage jobs. There are 2 things that I think can be better. One came originally in President Clinton's administration, the Earned Income Tax Credit, that better targets the people who need the help and makes the work the incentive. And I think the other thing that we don't do enough, to consider is the real cost of employment. If we wanted to make a huge impact, I think we could make a difference by decreasing the payroll tax and replacing that revenue with something else, perhaps a consumption tax. There have been a number of smart people who have talked about replacing the payroll tax with a carbon tax and taxing something that you don't want rather than taxing something you want more of.
Other questions? We have time for a few more questions. See everybody scratching their head and having us look in other directions. Yes, ma'am, what's the question? And I'll get you the microphone.
Okay.
There you go.
Hi. One of the things I haven't really heard much, I mean, I'm hearing about tourism, I'm hearing about, forest products. I come from a background of forestry too. My, grandparents and parents worked in the woods. Those days are probably gone. One thing I'm not hearing is the technology aspect. One of the reasons we moved back to Monmouth, frankly, was the internet access. It's incredible, it's wonderful, it's extremely fast, and it's very cheap. And thank you, whoever's bright idea that was. But
that was a very smart person, whoever was involved. That mayor we need more of.
I don't know who it was. I wasn't here at the time.
There weren't that many things we can brag about during those years.
Let's totally brag about that. I'm just wondering, what are we doing to sell that? I mean, one of the big reasons to move to Monmouth was it's affordable and there's this access to internet, which frankly allows me to have a family wage job. So what are we doing to expand that in the county? And who says this needs to go to Portland?
So just to make sure I'm understanding the question, so what are we doing to increase access to technology, high-speed internet, but also other technologies that make you competitive, even if you live in a small town globally? Who would like to take the first shot? Representative?
I think it really speaks to that notion of infrastructure. Internet access and broadband access is one example of that. There are lots of entrepreneurs who talk about what they need, really. In fact, Senator Johnson has a very colorful story she tells about a world-class entrepreneur in her community in Scappoose who says, all I need is high-speed internet and UPS. And that makes sense. There's a terrific book some of you may have encountered called The Rise of the Naked Economy, written by a former mayor of Santa Cruz who's a graduate of the University of Oregon, who talks about what's going to happen to the economy and the nature of work, that there are going to be fewer and fewer people who go to an office on a typical schedule, that there are more and more people who have to create their own opportunities, who come together in project teams that then disperse, and all these sorts of things that make it that much more important for that sort of infrastructure that serves the entire community. We're looking, I think, throughout the state. There's a broadband advisory council that's working in close collaboration with private industry to get that last mile or that last half mile to some of the more remote parts of the state that are suffering. And it makes a difference economically, it makes a difference in terms of safety, and it's really a key element, I think, one of those things that the state can invest in without having to make a guess about which sort of industry or what sort of opportunity makes sense in a particular place in the state. Making sure that that infrastructure exists everywhere allows the talents that are native in Oregonians and those who are here by choice to go in the directions they will.
Gene? Yeah.
I do apologize. Sean Irvine is the Economic Development Director for the City of Independence. I had a brief conversation with him actually about MyNet and pushing it out just the other day. Again, brief conversation, so we'll probably mess up a few of these details. He's put together a quick one-page flyer, if you will, handout, broadcasting or publicizing the gigabyte city that MyNet offers, and was up in Portland the beginning of last week, I believe, at a it was a medical type conference, but through the use of internet. I can't remember the name. Yes, telemedicine, thank you. And what the City of Independence is doing is in their City Hall, in the Independence Civic Center, they're actually taking a space and they're dedicating it so that businesses who are wanting to try out MyNet and wanting to try out this gigabyte service, if you will, can come into that space and use it. I don't know if it's rental by day, by week, or whatnot. I know Paul and I have had conversations about sort of executive center, if you will, and this is really what Sean's pushing as far as to really push out MyNet and the service that provides. So I'm guessing the City of Monmouth will be doing something as well. I just haven't had that conversation yet, but there are efforts being made to let people know more about MyNet and the benefits and the traction that should hopefully draw for businesses to come to our community.
And one of the things, just in terms of history, MyNet stands for Monmouth-Independence Network, which was a fiber system put in together. It is two governments coming together to be able to make basically the new farm to market road was the concept. And the pipe is huge. I'm not an engineer, so I can't explain how big, but it's really big. And the idea is that companies can literally locate there and be available and able to keep up with change. So that is one of the assets that we have as a community that isn't always known. Other questions that people might, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Here you go.
I'll be brief, you're getting tired. I work for the Mid-Valley Literacy Center. When I say that I work there, I'm a volunteer. It's a completely volunteer-run school that basically was formed when Chemeketa Community College discontinued their Spanish literacy outreach. The question for you, my boss, the founder of the school, says, I keep telling her, everybody is talking about GED and about reaching out to the 40,000 residents of these counties that do not have a high school degree. You're doing it. Why don't you go for some of the state money or the local money? She says, no, there's too much paperwork. She can't afford the person to do all the statistics to satisfy the requirements if she goes for money. So we scramble. We're always underfunded. We are volunteer, but we still have to push out. And we struggle terribly that way. To the state legislatures, how the heck can we reduce that paper burden? Thank you.
Again, understanding that the Representative Read is on our side and not trying to put him on the spot.
One simple way would be to not be as concerned with how the money is used. I'm being flip, of course, but that's one of the real challenges in making sure that we have additional resources to devote to good purposes, is generating the confidence amongst taxpayers and voters that it's being used well. And one of the ways we do that is to make sure that programs that receive it are doing all the right things, or measuring the right things, or have the right controls in place, and that sort of thing. As to the specifics, I'm not on the education committee, so I don't have a really good specific answer, but I think we are generally looking for ways where we can streamline that and minimize the burden that places on all the school districts and education service districts and other education professionals. It is a challenge, though, to find that right balance so that it's not being misused or directed poorly, but I appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah. Any more? Yes, sir?
You know, and the key to being a volunteer is to get other people involved, you know, as you move forward. I know, I mentor a kid at Dallas High School, okay? It's my lunch on Tuesdays. What a great way to spend your lunch hour, or 45 minutes, with a kid. Because if they get too far behind, it's hard for them to graduate from high school, you know? And then they're behind the 8 ball because they've gotten farther behind, and then they kind of give up by the time they're a junior in high school. Well, heck with it, I'll go get a GED, or I'll go do something else. There's no structure, usually at home, so they don't get it at all. And then they're trying to find a job as they move forward, and not many folks are gonna hire someone without a high school education anymore, not anymore, you know. So I think the thing is, I believe that volunteerism is contagious, because they'll see you out there doing that. They'll see any one of these folks right here volunteering an hour or 2 hours. What's an hour a week, okay? The most valuable thing that we have to give is our time. And we need to give it back. Pay it forward, or whatever you say. We have to continue to do that. We have to get more and more people involved. I know there's a lot of people that are working as much as they can. But you know what? There's a gal that lives in Independence. Her name's Betty Plood. That lady does more volunteer work than anyone I know. She's a role model for someone my age, because I don't know how old she's in her 70s. She has to be probably close.
I was gonna say your age.
I'm not there yet, okay? I might look at it. But you know, folks like that are role models for someone my age or younger than I am. Because here they could be sitting at home watching Perry Mason at 12 o'clock, but she's out and about, you know? Well, I know it's old school. See, I'm old, okay? Is it still on at noon? I don't know. No? But you know what I mean, though? Because it is contagious. And And we need to continue to get people involved. Because there's a lot of people out there who are looking for something to do. It's just like the Salvation Army, okay? I ring the Salvation bell at Christmas time. What a great program they have. No high administrative cost. Every dime that goes into that red kettle in Polk County stays in Polk County to provide services for folks that need it. That's a, you know, if I'm not volunteering, they're actually having to pay someone the minimum wage to ring the bell.
So perhaps one of the ideas for a follow-up item around the importance of volunteerism and around the idea of maximizing volunteer time is potentially looking at some streamlining, but also in looking at making it easier for folks to volunteer in terms of, I know that nowadays there's a lot of background checks, there's a lot of other things that are done for the safety of those involved. Potentially some liability issues. At one time, the state of Oregon was looking at how to basically provide a baseline protection for folks that are volunteering in times of emergency. Perhaps there's an item that we could be looking at, because we do have a lot of folks, especially right now, young retireds that have perhaps not a lot of money, but some time, and we want to maximize that, because ultimately every person that is helped in terms of literacy, for example, isn't just in the workforce, but is also helping the entire community. So that's a great piece. Any other questions before we close tonight? Questions you want to ask that are out there on the... Okay, seeing none, what we're going to do is just a couple more things to wrap up. First, thank you again for being here. All of you have very busy lives, and especially, I know Representative Read has to drive back up to Beaverton, and I want Mrs. Read to know that we really appreciate the fact that you can come here. One thing I want to emphasize to folks that are just tuning in the audience as well, one of the main constants that was talked about tonight was education and workforce readiness, making sure that our employers have folks that are ready to work, whether that's a college education, whether that's an apprenticeship, whether that's skills that are evolving. On April 23rd at Western Oregon University in Monmouth, in the Werner University Center at 7 p.m. So April 23rd, 7 p.m., we're going to have a very similar forum. It's the second of what we hope to be 6 forums. That's going to focus on education and workforce readiness. We've taken a swing at the bat today about what we face in terms of the challenges, especially for small business and for our economy. We're going to take these ideas. We're going to ask for anybody that's tuning in right now or in the audience or on the panel that would like to help put together concrete proposals for the future so we can chew on that and work on that. But there's obviously a need for a little bit of help in tweaking what we're training, what we're teaching, and how we're preparing the next generation. There's a lot of discussion about the education reforms that have currently been implemented, and really that for small districts as well as for large districts, Salem as well as the Monmouth-Independence district, how that's going to play out, and what that means in terms of, okay, we've educated somebody, does that mean they're actually ready to work? And that connection. Oregon's been a leader for a long time in workforce development, and I happen to believe that literacy and programs like that directly relate to workforce readiness. So thank you very much for tuning in. We appreciate your comments and your questions. We're going to continue offline, individual questions if you have them with the panelists. And we're always available at www.paulevans.org if you have specific questions. Thanks for your time.